the change is possibly coming now. If you were, I think I again agree with you, Michael. I think it's one of those things, and I think I've been getting asked a lot of questions from sort of young Australians right now. 22-year-olds. This reminds me of yourself as well, right? You're studying some of the most innovative technology. You've taken chances and gone and built a fund, joined a blockchain and built a blockchain. Like that's remarkable, right? Like you've taken risk in order to doing that. And if you were speaking to a 22-year-old, or 20-year-old, maybe 22-year-old, they've just finished university or they're finishing right now, they're watching this, they've got $500,000 to their name, because they've already paid 47% to the government. And they're learning solidity, dreaming of building something. What would you tell them this week? What's your advice?
Oh man, if this student was in Australia, I'd say, if the budget gets passed and none of that stuff really changes in 2028 when the next federal election is due, or that's the latest when the federal election can happen, which is every 3 years in Australia, or up to every 3 years, then I honestly have to say, like, maybe consider leaving, or at least leaving for a period of time, because as I just mentioned, you can go to other countries that are far more friendly, not just in the tax jurisdiction, but also in the regulatory situation. So, for example, like where I am in Nassau in the Bahamas, and I know this is like far from Australia, et cetera, and there's not many Australians here, but they've managed to, and this is a small country of a few 100,000 people, they've managed to really put in the effort in order to try and understand and be friendly towards this industry and technology industries as a whole. So, just like very quickly, they have this thing called the Digital Assets Regulatory Act, or the DARE Act. And when I looked through a draft proposal of it, because they wanted my opinions on it, you could tell that they very clearly understood the industry. So these politicians in the Bahamas spend their time trying to understand the industry. And that this is something that Australia should do, that has a far bigger population and more politicians. That's what they should be doing. And the politicians don't really care about it because they're just not seen as like a very popular political issue. But the thing is that the crypto industry, like it is with other emerging technologies, is just going to continue to grow year on year on year and become a bigger share of the world economy. And so, if you're a young person, you kind of want to go to a jurisdiction where you think that your efforts are going to be more rewarded. I talked about like Singapore, even New Zealand, and other countries that are out there, which are like are more friendly towards these sorts of technologies. And yeah, it's just going to be a lot easier for you to build wealth, because it's a real slap in the face. And you obviously know this well. Fred, very successful founder, started from nothing, grew to something substantial, put in a lot of time and effort, the sleepless nights, the ups and the downs, and the risk and all that. And to be able to do all of that, and the government just comes in and just wants to take almost half of the effort, despite not really helping out at all, or in many cases putting roadblocks in front of you by all these like regulations and stuff, and and bad aspects of the law, etc. It's just like really hard to deal with. And then you realize that your money is going to government programs and so-called infrastructure events that are, the costs are just way overblown. You're not getting value for money, and you just feel like that other people who maybe don't want to take the level of risk and put in as much effort are just getting kind of like your rewards that really should just belong to you and the other people at your company that worked hard and grew the company with you. And you want to attract those sorts of people like yourselves, Fred, like into Australia. Those are like the really productive people that's just going to turbocharge our economy to being like in the top of the world. And instead, we're just kind of disincentivizing that, which doesn't make sense at all. Especially when governments like ours and others love to talk about, oh, economic growth and productivity and all that. Well, how do you do that? You get that with by being friendlier to entrepreneurs and employees and hardworking people, not doing the opposite.
It's definitely tough times. Um,
Yeah, it is,
not the
unfortunately.
best,
Yeah.
not the most friendly to the Australian dream. Talking now, sort of chunking up a bit as well, talking on a global stage. You compete with some of the, in some of the most, I guess in the crypto space, one of the most competitive spaces is the actual L1 blockchain environment. Tell us about some of the key milestones, and sort of ways you're sort of trying to, really compete and get Sonic to break through.
So an L1, as you mentioned, is what we call in the industry a layer one. So that's essentially like an underlying blockchain. So a blockchain is a data structure where it's basically like what we call like the ledger. So the computers confirm transactions are putting on this ledger, which is somewhat similar to like an accounting ledger. You know, your transaction history, assets going in and out. Um, so Ethereum is an example of like an L1, and us at Sonic are also an L1. It's competitive because there are a lot more L1s out there than there were in 2018 when we started. So that's one thing. And there are even more L1s, believe it or not, that are coming online that are raising like tens of millions, or in some cases, even like a couple of $100 million, which is just kind of like insane in terms of the numbers, especially since how competitive it is. So the way that we're competing, we basically like need to grow the network. And it really comes down to like three things: business development, marketing, and technology. So on the technology side, I think a lot of chains out there are already like quite fast and low cost. And so just optimizing the chain further to be even like more low cost or faster isn't really good enough because it's kind of being commoditized. And so what we do is we need to have different technology features out there that entice like applications to launch on the network. And so the approach that we've taken is that because we've already scaled the technology quite well with the new chain, we want to focus our technology developments on these like what we call business features. And so there are things. It's all about like making the user interface a lot more efficient. So we've got like an upgrade coming out that makes it a lot easier for people to submit transactions on the network where it doesn't require for them to pay gas, or like someone else can pay gas. And so applications, DeFi, whatever it might be, can onboard users a lot more easily because they would necessarily need the Sonic token to begin with in order to start transactions on the network. They can already skip that step. And so a lot of our technology changes now are about improving the user interface for businesses. And on the business side and the marketing side, they're all kind of interlinked. So it's really like going out there and telling applications, hey, we know that you have options with these different chains, but at least deploy on ours because you have these unique user experience features that you're not going to get with other chains. And it just makes it a lot easier for you to deploy your application and to really scale it up and basically allow people to more easily interact with the application. So just quickly, like for example, if you're like a perpetual exchange or a swap decentralized finance DeFi project, you can come on the network with the new technology. And it's just a lot easier for people to like trade and trade and trade and really interact with it. Whereas maybe for another network, for every transactional trade that they place, they have to like sign the transaction and go through all of these other steps. And it's just kind of annoying. So those are the ways that we're trying to compete. And it is a bit tough because, as you know, the crypto markets right now have not been doing very well for the past 2 years. There's more competition out there, so we really got to cut it out. We really got work cut out for us to compete.
I think in I think it's what you're addressing really is the onboarding factor into blockchain, and for dApps, and really you're trying to address a root issue there. I think that is going to bring in more people into using the chain itself, and I think that's fundamental. Is there a key target or sort of customer or that you're going after? And I guess what I'm interested in is, say it's 2031 for that customer, or so, what would be that headline that you'd love to come out? What are you sort of longer term building towards?
That Sonic is known as like the number one chain for decentralized finance. That's what I want the headline to be. Sonic has this amount of like assets on chain, is number one in DeFi. That's where I really want to be. That's the market that we're kind of trying to go after for a number of reasons.
And so can people bridge their tokens and bridge their positions and things like that from over to Sonic? What sort of how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, so people can the Sonic network is integrated with a variety of different international exchanges that are out there. for example, like Binance. So people can withdraw assets to the network. They can withdraw, for example, like US dollar Circle, withdraw obviously the native like S tokens or Sonic token. So they can also bridge to the network using third-party providers, for example, like Layer Zero and Axler and a few of these other bridges. All of the details are kind of like on our website at soniclabs.com, which has like a whole bunch of guides there about like what bridges you can use, what assets you can move over. It's all pretty seamless because the Sonic network is what we call like an Ethereum virtual machine based chain or EVM based chain. It basically means that the way that smart contracts execute on the network, generally speaking, is similar to like how you do on Ethereum. So the ability to move assets or connect to another chain, such as Ethereum and other chains that run the similar smart contract stack, it makes it really easy to move assets back and forth. So you can bridge to the network using an exchange or using your own wallet and like a third party service as well.
So Sonic is the number one DeFi chain in 2031. That's the headline. And
Yes, that's the objective.
I think that I think Sonic's got that infrastructure, underlying it, and it's got that deep integration into the exchanges and clearly the credibility as well. I think thank you so much, Michael, for unpacking that. And obviously, you are 100% one of the a great example of a DeFi founder, sorry, an Australian crypto founder that has now obviously decided to go overseas. What's the best place for people to learn more about Sonic and Sonic Labs?
So we do a lot of our promotion on X at Sonic Labs, so all one word at Sonic Labs. That's our main Twitter. That's where most of our news initially comes out on. And also soniclabs.com. Again, like all one word, soniclabs.com. That's where you can see all the documentation as a developer, as a user, a bit about the project and the history and other things as well.
All right, guys, head on over to Sonic Labs on Twitter and obviously follow Michael Kong on Twitter as well. And thank you so much, Michael, for joining us.
Thanks, Fred. Appreciate it.